David here from Figboot on Pens. Today I have something a little bit different for you. I'm not going to just be taking a look at one pen. Today I'm going to be showing you four. And they were four very similar Montblanc pens from the 1960s. The number 14, the number 24, the number 32, and the number 34. First of all, I wanted to send out thanks to Andreas for his loan of these pens. I appreciate the chance to take a look at these. I really might not have had an opportunity to do so without his generosity. We're going to take a look at these four pens and some of their parts and features and what makes them unique. I'll talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about them. We'll show some measurements, some size comparisons, and then provide a writing sample. Today I'm going to experiment with a little bit different camera and lighting setup. I don't think I have it quite perfected yet, but we'll at least try this out and see how it goes. So why don't you join me over here at camera 2. So here they are, the Montblanc, excuse me, 14, the 24, the 32, and the 34. Now, these models date back to the 1960s and kind of mark the new start of an era for Montblanc. Unlike kind of previous torpedo-shaped designs, these pens were more modern and kind of more elongated with sharper edges and focused more kind of on functionality and appeal. So all these four pens are very similar. So what I'll do is go over the parts and features of one of the models and then kind of discuss what's different about the other three. So we'll start by taking a look at the 14. We'll start at the cap. The cap does have the Montblanc snowflake. The finial, it is slightly raised. It isn't 100% flat. The clip on the 14 and the 24 are similar to where you can see here how it is slightly, has kind of a ridge in the middle of it. It's not quite flat. And you can see here how it compares to the 146 and what the modern clips looks like. There is a clip band here, which is really not doing much for me. It kind of goes up and down. I don't know if it's supposed to represent an M. It kind of looks like an M when you hold it sideways. Don't know if that's the case. But I don't know, it just doesn't do that much for me. And then we have very, very small branding. And you can see here on the clip band how the writing is very, very small on this small edge, which kind of serves to minimize the step down between the cap and the barrel. But you know, maybe I'm just getting old, but I have a hard time seeing that writing just with my naked eye, and so I appreciate the more modern pens that have the larger writing on there, but it does have the branding on there and has the pen number. And then it tapers down here to a rather long piston knob. The piston knob itself starts right around here, so it's a good inch long. It seems like most modern pens, the piston knob is considerably smaller and maybe half the size, but this is a very large piston knob. And that it tapers down and then has a small gold ring here on the back, and then it has another snowflake on the back here, which is perfectly flat. It's not raised like on the top. And this kind of reminded me, I like that. It kind of reminded me of the Montblanc M that they have right now with a snowflake on the back. Now that's kind of on the side of the back. It's not on the 100% on the back, but I just thought that was nice to have something on the end of the barrel as well. So when you're writing it, you can kind of show that. I think that's the point of that, so that when you're writing with it, that you can kind of flash that as well, since this is a status symbol. It does have a snap cap to reveal this very interesting nib. Here's a close-up picture of it. These models were some of the first with what's called an enclosed wing nib. They have ebonite feeds, and they also include a special interior tube, which they claim makes it leak-proof and airplane safe. There are no visible markings on this nib. The section is very long and tapers down, and the resin really isn't thick. I do find this section to be a little bit on the thin side. I typically prefer them to be a little thicker. The precious black resin, as Montblanc calls it, is kind of the signature material of Montblanc, and it's a specially tempered plastic which gives a very unique shine and gloss, and it's also kind of more difficult to scratch and damage, so it provides some additional protection as well. You know, I don't know if Montblanc changed their precious resin recipe over the years, but I find that the resin on these models feels a little more plasticky as compared to some of the modern pens, like I have a 146 and a 149, and that feels much more solid. But this just has a little bit more of a plasticky feel, so I have a feeling they refined that formula over time. There is an ink window here. Here's a close-up picture of it. You know, on this particular model, I'm really not digging this yellow. I don't know if it's supposed to match the gold of the nib, but on this one, it's a very nice ink window, and I like the texture to it, but I'm just not a fan of that color. I just think that it doesn't necessarily match with the rest of the pen, unless they're trying to match the color of the nib. But I don't particularly care for that yellow, but it is a very nice large ink window that works very well. The pen does post very deeply and securely, and overall this is not a very heavy pen. It is a rather light pen, so posting it it really has no effect on any of the weight balance or anything along those lines. You'll see in the size comparisons that these are really not large pens, but you know, I've found over time I typically prefer a larger pen, but these are very comfortable to use and very comfortable to write with, and just the tapered section works well for this particular pen. So let's take a look at this pen and then what some of the differences are in the other models that we have. So here we have the 14 that we just took a look at, and now we're going to take a look at the next one, which is the 24. And the 24 has a little logo on here and actually has something written. It says Agromashina Impex Bulgaria, which is an agricultural equipment company, and that's their logo in Bulgaria. And this apparently was given out to their employees. And as the sticker says, that this is a fine nib. This is virtually the same size as the 14, but rather than the thicker cap band, it actually has a very thin cap band, and then it doesn't have a band at the end of the barrel. And it actually has a blue ink window, and while it's still not my favorite, I still think it just stands out a little bit. The blue I think is a lot better than the yellow of the 14. Maybe a dark gray might look nice. I don't know, but for some reason the ink window, while it's very useful on this, for some reason I'm not liking it on this particular pen. Then we have the 32, and on the 32, obviously the cap is silver, and the band, or I'm sorry, the clip is a little bit different. You can see here in the picture that the clip is actually kind of more flat than having the ridge that's on the 14 and the 24. It has a snap cap as well, and what's distinctive about this pen, it has a considerably smaller nib. Here's a picture of the nib. You can see here that it actually has 585 stamped on it, which stands for 14 karat gold. And then here's a comparison between one of the smaller nibs and one of the larger ones. Then finally we have the 34. And on the 34, 34 actually has a twist cap, and the ink window is still there, but it's actually part of the threads. And the major difference here is the smaller nib is actually the rose gold, which is really nice. So here's a picture of the comparison of the rose gold and the regular gold. It makes me kind of want to go out and take a look at some of the other Montblanc rose gold nibs out there, but this one has a really nice look to it, and I like that look. Now, how do these pens perform? The 32 is an extra fine and the rest are fines. And while I typically prefer mediums, I find that each of these pens performs very, very well. I was actually very impressed by their performance. And we'll see in the writing sample, but I feel that the ink flow is very good, and I really don't find either of them to be very scratchy at all, which is generally my fear once I get down to a fine or an extra fine, or nibs even this small. So let's take a look at some measurements. We'll do some size comparisons, and then I'll provide a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Montblanc 14, 24, 32, and 34. Almost sounds like lottery numbers. Here is the, here's the 14 and the 32, which are kind of the larger and smaller of these pens. This is what they compare to a Montblanc 146. And you can see that's considerably larger. And here it is compared to a 149, and you can say see that is considerably larger than these pens. Then some other things that are fairly comparable in size. Here is a Pelikan M600. Then we have a Lamy Studio, which is very similar in size to these. And then probably the one pen that is one of the most similar is a Pilot Metropolitan. A Metropolitan is very similar in size and in length to these pens. So in regard to the writing sample, basically there was two different nibs, and so what I'll do is a writing sample with each of the individual nibs. We'll do one with the 14 and then one with the 20 or the 34 that had the rose gold nib. So here we have the Montblanc, and this particular one is the 14, and this is a extra fine nib, and the ink is Montblanc Mystery Black. This is what it looks like. It's a pretty standard black. I'd have to say that, I was into black inks for a while, and I'm kind of moving away from that. And this is one that is decent. I do really like the bottles that it comes in. It just feels really solid. The glass is really solid. The cap is kind of cool, and it has this nice reservoir area in here where you can kind of tip it down there once it gets down to the bottom. But I do like their bottles that they have. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. Dog. This is an extra fine pen, and typically I'm a little afraid when it comes to extra fines in regard to scratchiness, and I really don't find this one scratchy at all. You can get a little bit of line variation out of here. I obviously don't want to push it too much, but for an extra fine, it really is not scratchy. It is fairly smooth. There is a bit of feedback, and in regard to wetness, it's not overly wet. You wouldn't expect an extra fine to be super wet, but it's very nice. In regard to reverse writing, it's very scratchy. And I didn't even spell writing, it's writing. So it's something that's almost down to like a needlepoint, but it is very scratchy in regard to that. But in regard to some quick writing, it keeps up just fine. So the ink flow is no big deal whatsoever. It is perfectly fine when it comes to this extra fine nib. So let's take a look at the 34. And the 34 is the one with the twist cap, and then it has the rose gold nib on the smaller. So this particular one actually came to me inked with some Montblanc lavender purple. And so this is a fine. Lazy dog. And again, you can get a little bit of line variation out of here. I don't want to push it too much. But for a fine, it's very, very nice to use and very pleasant. So I'm very actually impressed by these nibs. And it's not super wet. And with reverse writing, it's still very scratchy, but it does work. And with some fast writing, there's no issue whatsoever. So we have the Montblanc 14, then we have the 24, we have the 32, and the 34. I'm very impressed with these pens. While I typically prefer a slightly larger pen, I find that these are very comfortable to use and perform outstanding. And for the extra fine and the fine nibs are ones that I would actually consider. And I don't find them scratchy at all, and they have a very good ink flow to them. Thank you again to Andres for sending these to me for review. They will be cleaned out and back to you in the mail shortly. I do have a number of giveaways coming up for subscribers, so if you want to be part of them, don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.